Welcome, welcome. It's Friday. Thank you for joining me. I'm Karenann McDonald, and it is such a great time to be alive. Oh my gosh, I had the most amazing day. I almost had the most amazing interview for you guys, but I have to redo that. That was on me, let me say. I had some very interesting interviews and stuff like that this week, and today I was actually had the pleasure of spending the afternoon with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And Dr. Richard Allen Miller is a study all on himself. If you haven't taken a look at him, please do, because he's pretty amazing. He has a huge background here. And I've done several interviews with him, but he's just got a little his fingers into everything. He was in the military and in the Navy for so many years. He was a pioneer. He's a physicist. He's a developer of equipment. Like you name it, he's probably done it. And so, anyway, I thought, what better thing to do and talk with Rick today and see about what's going on because there was all this stuff coming out with the Atlas, 3-1 Atlas, right? Or 3i Atlas, however people say it. Everyone's got a different version. But anyway, it's not really common or anything like that. But I thought, I want to go hear it because there's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on. And I started looking at this, and there was stuff out a couple days ago on Fox and 3i Atlas, the third interstellar, whatever it is, blinking, sending the wow signal. It's in, it's out, it's going perihelion. And, every remote viewer has a different version from its AI to there's every little species known to man. And it's either malevolent, or they just sitting here as watching. So, in other words, no one's got a damn soil that you can basically go into. Anyway, so we're sitting here. I thought, well, okay, this is kind of cool. So anyway, all of a sudden something comes out with Avi Loeb. And I went, well, this is cool. It's supposed to be really unusual. And these, there it has no comment that it's got an anti-tail and it's supposed to be pointing towards the sun and it's not going away. The rotational axis now is aligned with the sun and this is not natural. So anyway, everyone's got this thing about, oh my gosh, it must be something here to detect, is there any intelligent life on Earth? Maybe it's not interested. That's not why it's staying. And maybe it's watching. And maybe it's just creating a whole bunch of stuff in here. And so one of the interesting things, if you want to take a look at it, because of course, Dr. Miller's been in the field, the movies, the X-Files, my gosh, was made about him. If you want to talk about ET and extracurricular things and extra paranormal and cryptozoology and all that, you got to talk to Rick on it, right? So anyway, I'm sitting there. I sent him a couple videos. I said, can you get me a little bit of a brief as to what you think here? And one of the ones everyone's talking about is that, oh my gosh, the 3i Atlas just collided with a satellite constellation. And there's all these things going, and there's 89 satellites that have been destroyed or imploded, and it's going on and on and on. And so what is going on here? Is it interstellar? Is it challenging all the physics that we know? Well, it's certainly throwing out everything NASA's ever shown, anything above and beyond here. So this, thing comes up here and it's talking about Michio Kaku's stuff. And I'm like, what? Theoretical fear, theorists and all this? I'm like, what is it? So my ears will pick up and I'm going, well, what's Michio's approach to this? Is it advanced physics? Is there some clarity? Is there something going on here? And so people are sending me all this stuff. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I thought, well, let's just run it by. And this is where it always pays. If you don't know it, hey, you could talk to someone one step away. And I'm just going to put it in the chat room here because you got to see this. And I just don't buy anything these days. Even the different things we're seeing in the shootings and stuff, a lot of them are psyops. You run it back, you run it forward, you run it back, and you go, oh no, they were ordering crisis actors and all sorts of stuff here. I mean, this is absolutely crap. So when you start looking at this, I'm going, what the heck is going on here? And so one of the things here is that this, Atlas, and how come no one else is reporting it? And they're putting it on the stream. And again, I'm going, I just don't buy this. So I thought, well, why not have a, chit chat and catch up with Rick and see what was going on. Well, let me tell you, thank gosh, he actually knows them. And so I went, you're joking. He says, no, I spent all whatever since you gave me this yesterday. And he says, I was actually able to contact him. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, so what's the scoop? I said, because this isn't adding up. And, to me, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a bloody duck. And so I'm kind of glad I know, some people that can like discern some of the quack stuff here, because I mean, this is absolutely insane. And so this is exactly what happened. He got a hold of him. And you want to know what the whole thing was? It's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. It's CGI made up. And you know what? I'm glad I took that extra time today, because you know what he said? You know what Misha said? Is that basically he didn't know about it. And what you're doing now is not only creating, you know, disinformation, misinformation, it's misleading. But now what we're looking at is they're taking people's, identification, personification, qualifications, and it's basically like either stolen valor or identity fraud. And he's like, whoa, he wanted to get on this and stop that. So these are kind of the things that, we need to take a look at, because, I mean, how many times? I mean, that's just not right. And the misleading and stuff that went on was absolutely insane. So, one of the things here, I just wanted to show you, this is the two videos I'm referring to. So, if you see these, you guys, this is what I'm referring to right now. So, here they're going on and on and on, and they're talking about how,
something that has not been released, something that made his hands shake when he typed it.
It's all AI.
Thermal signatures inside 3i Atlas are moving, separating, and spreading into a wider formation as the object approaches perihelion. And their new trajectories, when he ran the orbital projections forward 6 months, every single one intersects with Earth's orbital path. Not near Earth, but through Earth's exact orbital position.
So when you're putting out misinformation and lying to the people, you can imagine what it does. It gets a lot of people upset, because I mean, there are a lot of people that are like on the digital keyboard warriors, right? And everyone, it came across my desk and I'm like, let me just see about this, right? So I'm going, well, is there any validity? Because, that's come out in the last 2 days. And what else has come out in the last 2 days? Well, of course, one of the other things that we see as well is the one that just came out here by Avi Loeb, and again, he's talking about some different things as well. So we'll just listen for just a sec here, because it's not that exciting. Nothing new.
That the rotation axis of this object is also directed at the sun, because the jet was wobbling around it. And that means that the object had a permanent day side from the sun-facing side and a permanent night side on the other side.
So the funny thing about all this is, at least when I talk to Dr. Miller, you know what he says? I don't know. And that was the first thing I actually appreciated, when someone said, I really don't know. And I said, I've talked to people that think they have been remote viewing up there. And I said, it seems to be not what people think it is. And it really is getting in here, just getting people, if it's not one crisis, it's another. But is this going to come in? Even if it's going to do that, is it going to create the ripple effect? Are we going to see what effects? Are we going to see the Schulman wave change here? Corneal mass ejections, solar flares, and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, I was like, well, let's just go over this in the pole shift stuff today. And of course, I had a great show I was going to show you guys today. And of course, I hit the wrong button. I deleted it. So I got to phone him up, and we'll have another one for you probably early next week. So, oh well, say la vie, easy come, easy go. So it happens, and it happens all the time. But I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of what I did do on a PowerPoint, because I actually put one together on that, and I thought, well, that's really cool. Let's get this stuff going. So you never know what you're going to do. I thought I was so great putting this thing ahead of time, and say la vie, as I always say. So anyway, let's go through that just a little bit in here, and I think it's amazing. And like I said, I apologize for deleting that, but I'll get that back up. But let's take a look at one of the things, and I'll just give you the Cole's Notes version of what we kind of talked about today, because it was actually an exciting talk, if you want. Okay, so I put a thing here, and of course, if you're on my Facebook, welcome all my Facebook friends here, and acquaintances, and people that are peeking in, and watchers and followers, or whatever it is. Anyway, so and I must say, this is pretty amazing. I had a nice quiet little group. It was about 1,000, and I don't know what exploded. We're well over. We're close to 7,000 this week, you guys. I don't know what's happened, but something's hit the fan, and apparently I'm in it, so that's okay. So I appreciate all the friend referrals and putting those, sharing the videos and stuff like that, or sharing some of the stuff with my groups here. So one of the things too, if you haven't gone into my group, well, do take a look at my group. We'll just take a look at that for a sec. So it's Karen Lusick, McDonald, Data Share, Intel, Truth Graph. I figure someone there, but as you can see, we're like almost like 6,000. I mean, that's like, whoa, 5,000 up this thing. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. So if you're not part of that, I'll put that into the chat room for you as well. Going back to my main page here, let's go back to the albums. Anyway, and anything you want, we'll go through a few things in here, but let's talk about this pole shift because I got all excited about it. That was my thing today. So I wanted to see, what was going on with these, satellites, and apparently it's all bullshit. So none of us have to worry. So we'll just carry on. And then one of the other things I really wanted to look at was this video. And one of the things in here, Dr. Richard Allenmitter has been telling me from day one here is there is a video, and he said you have to watch out for Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. And I'm like, okay, Beetlejuice. So anyway, there is a little show and little channel that's been basically keeping it up here. So basically what happened a few days ago is it had a little bit of a hiccup. I'd say it's, just like a pimple, kind of burst something a little bit. It has not gone supernova. Gosh knows if it, will, and whatever, who knows how long. But this was one of the things that actually was brought to my attention, that this is the type of thing, if it went supernova, we could have a little bit of a, wave thing, like surfing the wave down here. But I've also talked to people within the forces, and they go, Bisha, don't worry about it. So anyway, take a look at this. I always laugh because having been able to look at actually real footage with real NASA and real military, videos, a lot of these that you put out here are actually garbage. So I take that with an absolute greatest show. But if it's something that we want to keep an eye on, we'll see. If it blows up, we probably will take a look at it. But it's actually from the real Pax, the real POW, the real piece. Anyway, is just Beetlejuice. I've been keeping kind of an eye on that. If there's anything worth exciting, then we could take a look at it. So, how is Darius today? And so now, what you be? How's it going? It's Kirsten. Great to see you guys. So, if anyone has any questions or want to talk about something, just throw a few different topics in there, and I'm happy to jump around with that. But we're gonna go back and take a look at this incredible little album I put together. So we'll see what comes of it, because it's always could be interesting. So I'll give you the Coles Notes version to what we were doing, because I think it's actually pretty cool. So let's take a look. And this is the one thing, when you start looking at this whole thing out there, I mean, I'm just all about the space. Forget the ground stuff, or even get the underground things. And we'll talk about some weird stuff that's been going on here, but I really am enjoying this little part of it. So let's go pop into my little Facebook group here. So for those of you that don't know me, well, you're on my page or on my YouTube, or someone sent it to you. So anyway, I'm Karen Lusick McDonald. I have a background in integrative, holistic, natural, and even allopathic medicine. So I was a former neonatal nurse, and I've been nursing over 42 years, but most of it in the naturopathic venues here. And so I do everything from herbs and oils, played a little bit with live blood cell, big into yoni steams, vaginal steaming, colon hydrotherapy, enemas, all sorts of stuff to do, ritual abuse, sexual abuse, emotional trauma of any kind, addictions, sports and peak performance. Work a lot with crystals and biomats, essential oils, Vitaflux, massage, cranial sacral, all those fun things. Then when you get into the energy, matrix energetics, we did that. You do a little bit of theta, body talk, you touchy-feely thing, Reiki master, been there, done that. And so one of the things is really about getting people educated about the biofield, and looking at things too, how people can learn about their own iridology, and just getting the templates and looking at, what we can do. And there's so much out there. And especially I do basically all distance healing. So I prefer to work with remote because it's much better for you to be in your environment than going into a clinical office. It really is. Like, unless there are certain things like massage, reflexology, but usually you have that locally anyway. And then I usually teach self massage and, self reflexology and how to do stuff in there. So one of the other things that I got really excited about, which I call bioenergetic frequency, it's bioresonance medicine. And this has been in my field and awareness for 20, 30 years. And I've, literally got trained and went to the university here of the International Quantum Universities. That's where they put out doctors and PhDs and other nurses and all sorts of fun things, masters, sound therapy and everything else. So you're trained exactly as a doctor or a nurse or whatever field you're going into. The only difference is we're using natural methodologies, and they're all run by former doctors and medical performances. The other thing is, so we started in what was called the skill biofeedback, and our original, when the inventors, there was like a whole team of people, and the Apollo 13 project, and Dr. Bill Nelson, otherwise known as Desiree Dumine, actually passed away this last week. So a lot of people, these are the very, very, very pioneers. Before you had like this mobile stuff and Healy's and SOXs and stuff, the Skill EFPX team, we were the original, basically, biofeedback teams and instructors like in the last 30 years. So we've come a long way, baby, so to speak. And then when we started getting into pulsed energetic magnetic frequency, scalar, far infrared, any kind of biofrequency medicine, vibrational, in here, this is what we're looking at. And then there's always, of course, Royal Rife. So a lot of these devices, I usually don't suggest people try certain rifes until you've actually gotten a complete set of particulars, history, detailed, and I mean very detailed. You need to know if someone's been intercoursing with people, have taken those little jabby things in the last little while. You need to know when. You need to know if they have, if there's been things shoved up their nose, their mouth, or their butts lately. You need to know all the meds they're on. And we have seen that in these communities. And we've had a lot of people, probably about 4 or 5 people, actually, very young people in their 40s, early 50s, and that did not take that, but they've been using some of these substances. And a lot of people always want to attribute it to it's been scalar wave, it's a direct energy weapon, they've been attacked, it's all these things. And a lot of times it's a combination of stuff they've done or things in combination. I know one individual, we were talking about one of the people in the community, James Rank, that's had super soldier talk, and I'm telling you, he was on close to 10 contraindicated therapies and treatments, and they were not therapeutics, they are not therapies, they were actually pharmaceuticals and hybrid semi-synthetic pharmaceuticals. You don't do that. It's like mixing all sorts of different concoctions, and they don't always intermix. They certainly were contraindicated in every condition he had, which led to another one. So you might have a little bit of thyroid, you might have a little bit of leaky gut, but when you keep mixing them and missing them and don't even know people's blood type, so when you put on copper patches, into someone, with my blood type, I had basically a heart attack within 6 hours. I was like, you can't do that to me. But again, if you've got a different blood type, if you've got more copper based or something like that, or Irish negative, these things affect us differently. When you've got people that are more iron based versus copper, or suppose you have a mineral and we test your, whether it's hair or you test your saliva or you get your analysis tests. And maybe when I do biofeedback and you test to see that someone's got ample copper or they're not breaking it down, they're not breaking down iron, and you start putting supplements because some doctor or some, politician or whoever you think is on there is telling you it's great for you and shows you some live blood cell. Well, I'll tell you, live blood cell only sees less than 1% of the spectrum. That means they miss 99% of your immune system. They miss the other part of your entire biofeedback system. You know, that's like looking at, 1 grain of rice and you've missed all the rest. So if you base things on limitations, and this is what happened in these cases, is they end up dying. And the people that all gave them these things, or, psychics saying, well, you should take this, because I've been told you should have Vitex. Well, why would you give that to someone that's got a thyroid problem, congestive heart failure, in edema, can't breathe, and is on shortness of breath? Like, when I saw someone get up from the thing, I said, "You need to go for emergency intervention right now. You have shortness of breath. You're in respiratory failure." And people are just coming up with stupid, asinine ideas. We need to look at that. People need to quit putting all their eggs in one basket and take some accountability, and also go in, if it's things that you're putting in horse paste, then you better be putting the side effects and know every side effect to it, and know that there's several, medications or conditions you can't do that. If you actually look at the side effects of that, it's absolutely insane. I went today and I was actually looking through something else. And I sat there and I cleaned out about like literally 1,000 pictures. And my little iPads are basically my life. And they actually are a journey of everything I've been doing here. And I'll have to show you some of the problems there in a minute once we get through this presentation. But that's my background for those people that don't know who I am. Now you do. And like I said, there's all sorts of stuff. I work with probably about 10 different models of different biofeedbacks. Some you hold, some you don't. Some just produce tones. Some produce more tones, obviously, than tuning forks that we use. And that could be done during your session as well. I can actually get you to send me pictures of your eyes and stuff like that. We can do iridology. So biofeedback is much more advantageous than doing the limitations of doing pendulums or muscle testing, by the way. So these are some of the things that we have available. So you can just do pure sound. I can do pure light. And I've actually pioneered a few things. Like, gosh, at the rate we're going, we should be up for, like, I think a Nobel Peace Prize here pretty soon. But anyway, I've now been able to coordinate and interface some of these things, like the Neurovisor, which is an incredible device that is actually putting an ultrasound with the sound, and then it converts it into light. And the light just actually is like a fast flicker. So you can do it with someone that's actually got, something like seizuring or fresh surgery, like, a cataract. But having said that, it's got flicker technology between the sound, the light, and the flicker. Your light is actually still flickering like an ultrasound. And do you know what? It's decalcifying the third eye. Can you imagine people are getting brighter, smarter, dementia, and Alzheimer's? It's already been documented in the University of Toronto. Dr. Lee Bartel, thank you very much. And Dr. Cody Rowell, oh my gosh, a neuropsychiatrist, a psychiatrist in the Navy, is now using all our technology. And he's blowing it through the streams. The heart rate variability, and oh my gosh, you're going into like getting rid of this anxiety and stress and I don't know what, and instability, and you're just calming the brain, and the nice soothing sounds and the beautiful colors all mixed together well. And if you don't like the light, you can push it off so you don't see it. But nonetheless, this is reversing. Even right now, they're working with it with dementia and Alzheimer's. Plus, everyone's third eye calcified from all the what. Anyway, there we go. So let's move in here. So we talked a little bit about what's called the pole shift. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. It's been one of my favorite maps, not that it necessarily has to happen, but this is what they're telling us, that we're going on to the sixth epoch, or like, 6 times around the sun every like 20, almost 6,000 years. So if you take a look at it, I want you to look at these up. It's called the Future Map. It's usually known as Scallion's map, or Michael Scallion's, but his first name is Gordon. So what the hell did most people know? But there you go. So I want you to take a look at the topography of this. I want you to take a look at actually what is the projected pole shift. And again, they said we're in the precessional. So you may not be on like solid land, you guys. And he figures between a third to half of basically North America will be new oceanfront property there. So depending where you are, this is a really important thing. I've always known about this. And it doesn't even matter just that you're up there. You need to be bobulate here. So it's been known, it's been documented. I have worked with many people in the forces, and they literally have got maps from before. This is like what you're talking Tartarian. So things aren't always as, they seem here. So I do want you to take a look at that. So anyway, always being up if you can, at least 4,000 feet or up higher. So take a look where you live in your elevation, and you might want to take a little bit of movement there. So like I said, there could be one big passageway all coming from the Arctic here in the Bering Strait, and like that's a bay all the way down to Florida to the Gulf of Mexico or America, whatever you think it is. So, we could talk a little bit about all sorts of wild stuff too. And there we have all the fun stuff here in Venezuela. right? All the other things happening in our beautiful area here of where my babas were. So up in the motherland here of Tartarian, the Vedrus area. So take a look at that. Things may not always be the same. Look how close they are to here. So these are some of the things that we're kind of talking about a little bit today. So do take a look at that. And then I happened to find some very topography mats, which I just love. So I want you to take a look at where your elevation is because it really is important. As I said, low-lying stuff below a couple thousand feet is not the place you necessarily want to be on a pole shift. So going through here, there's things called Zeta Talk maps, all sorts of things in here. And again, a lot of people have been projecting these for a long time. These are some very cool maps I have found too. Have you guys ever seen these? These are actually what you call the wheels of peace. This is something that First Nations always talk about. These are the wheels of peace, and this is the energies and the flow, in here. So take a look. These are trying to be reestablished. That's why you're trying to get the flow of the waters back and take the dams down. All these things correlate to ancient and original timelines and stuff like that. So again, these are very cool. If you haven't seen some of these things, these are some of what's called the song lines or the ley lines or the memory lines, on here. So take a look at that. I just like gathering stuff. So he says, I've never seen half of this. I said, really? These are just out of my basic collection, just out of basically maps and stuff here. This is something called the Earth Grid Star, by the way, if you guys haven't seen this. This is actually called the 19+1. And in there, those are also correlating to waterways and very cool things. And I'll show you some very cool stuff where it's kind of all laying in here. But these are different strategic points, and they're held by different crystals, and I'm a holder of one of those things. Actually, I hold all of those at one point. I've got the connection to each one of them. So one of the things in here as well is this is actually train lines. I always thought it was very interesting. I like to see the major train lines and stuff and water lines and stuff like this. So you can see where bringing things in, transportation, energy, all those things could be grossly affected very easily. And almost if you think of where the orange is, we're going to look at the waterway paths. Very, very important. So if you see a lot of these things, a lot of the water actually stems from, as you think, where's it stemming from, guys? Above the fictitious border here. So a lot of the stuff between Saskatchewan and Alberta, those were some of the main waterways, and also just in the Siniak area here, just that area, we'll look at it too. So know where you're at. Okay. One of the other things I looked at is plates and, compressions and things are shifting back and forth. Most people have never even looked at this kind of stuff, where the tectonic plates are moving. Another one of mine too. It's the ley lines. So I don't know if you've ever seen these. These are very cool. These are some of the ley line points again. I want you to see how strategic little point here, number 8 is. Okay. I want you to know that that's right in the middle, kind of close of Alberta in there. Okay. And there's another one in here if you do different things like the chakras and stuff like that. So if you go into all the stuff in our area below us in Mount Shasta, well, that may not be there eventually. And we'll talk about what's happening with some of the different volcanoes. Actually, some of them were actually, again, putting out some more ash again today. So these are very cool things. I kind of like looking at this, and things are going to change anyway here. So if you know about the different dragon lines and stuff like this, this is very cool. I know Ashtiana Dean and several people, when you start talking about Avebury and all different things in the Orion lines. Again, where's this matrix here, right? There's the keys. Take a look at where all the convergence points are, guys. Right there, smack dab in the Blackfoot territory. There you go. Just south of the Sunni and the Dene and the Nihilwak Cree, and right next to the Kootenays in here. So take a look at that. These are things that they work on. This is how your systems, they're deriving energy and loose, all sorts of stuff. And again, water lines, really, really important to know, on that. So when you take a look at that, actually, I want to go back to that one again. It's really quite important in here. Let's see. I think, yeah, take a look at this, guys. This is a very important thing to see. The Mississippi, Missouri. Can you see where it starts up here right in Alberta, Saskatchewan? It's a little place up there called Elkwater. It's another place called Cypress Hills. before it was Alberta and Saskatchewan. And I want you to know this is where a very, very important place was that I was taken to as a clan mother. And it is called Indian Head up there. You can actually, like the Nassar lens, actually go up from the satellite and see this woman's head with a headdress, just like beyond a crown, but this gorgeous bonnet is up there by Irvine, but just south of something they call Medicine Hat and all the weird bases there at Suffield. I actually had a car being taken over with my friend. Let me say, someone took over her, car about 7, 8 years ago, and they took us for a ride for about 20 minutes. None of us could control the car except them, and then they gave it back. But up in here, very strange stuff. There's military bases under there. It's one of the highest points that you can see actually into the States from there. But I want you to see one of the things that's actually up there by the research park there. And it's something they say, if you know about the giant trees that were apparently blown up during the rods of gods and the, electric wars and stuff like that. If you want to go back to the Enki and the, Anunnaki and all sort of the different things here, is it in this area is where they took Sitting Bull. And very important because he was a protector of the clan mothers. And this is where they started the first musical ride and did one of their first RCMP bases and forts. Wherever there's a fort, you got military and weird stuff going on, right? Remember what the red coats were back then before when they were the Northwest Mounted Police and who actually paid their salary and why they came here from colonized things and Vatican and Crown. Anyway, up in here, can you see where it says milk? They call it Old Man River and the milk. And this is basically where the water system comes down. And this is where Standing Rock was. Lots of stuff here. Yellowstone blowing up. I want you to see how that Milk River becomes all the Mississippi and Missouri. And it flows out all the way down. Now, one of the coolest things as well, right when we were going there, and I was taking someone here, right at that border, you can see where Alberta, where it just right before that, it starts in here, and before Sask Energy tries to take it. And there's another river that goes actually up, what's called the South Saskatchewan. That's one of those things that flows backwards. And I've seen drain and disappear all in a day and then re-come back. But anyway, in here, a friend of mine were going across there, and we literally went through some sort of a portal. And I will talk about something. I actually went through a time portal about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And literally we were going up to the next town, which is about a 45-minute hour trip it should have been. And I don't know how I did it, but I was there in 15 minutes. And my friend had already put their order in and was at the table eating. I was already in the garage with my truck on the hook. And that's impossible. So we actually gained close to 45 minutes the other day. So it's not about time loss. I don't know, maybe we're youthing or something, or maybe things are shifting for a lot of us. I know about 6 people that had a time shift, and they're making us aware of it, right? That's the very cool thing. So anyway, I want you to see how it becomes Mississippi, Missouri. More importantly, is why we're holding the water for everyone down below us. So as you see it there, what you just don't see off the edge of the map there, that would be outside of Alberta, going into what you call British Columbia or into the Kootenay area, actually, above Washington State, that set of waters actually becomes everything for the West Coast. So this is basically the eastboard, and then actually it's kind of midway, and then the other one actually provides all the water on the West Coast. Very, very important to know this, and that's why when they talk about the New Madrid and San Andreas fault lines where you are. So again, looking at topographies are very important. I love this map. This is actually the coolest map. This is by, if you can imagine, church ward back in the 1930s. And these things were given to them. This is actually said to be, again, Tartarian maps. And you are looking at Atlantis and Mu. And I want you to see where they said that lost continent, where they had safety things for pole shifts. Surprise, surprise, satellite, right? Where are they sending them? Right there. So these might be some of the safer sites, and these are known to actually be underground bases and really weird stuff. But again, take a look at that. Like I said, we just feed it in for information, but I think that's really important there. This is a prehistoric. So in other words, it remains of one civilization, 2 civilizations, three or more civilizations. And get this, routes of possible departures from you. Wow, there we go. Couldn't be a reason that they're fighting all over near the Yucatan there and the rest of the part. Isn't that interesting there? As we talk about the Yucatan and we talk in here, basically the Gulf of whatever, and look at Central America in there. Very cool. All I got to say is it's worth taking a look at. Some of the other ones too. So this is also another pole shift map. Okay. This is one Dr. Miller had never seen a lot of the stuff I was doing. These are actually, again, fault lines. And this is why when the thing happened in Alaska up here about 2 months ago on the 8th, basically that 8.8, we felt it here because there's different things that move through or come through these areas. It kind of bounces in here. So I want you to take a look at that. Really, really important. And I remember being in Saskatoon or northern Saskatchewan and actually feeling quakes. And I'm like, get out of here. And it wasn't fracking. There was no things like that, no mining, and you knew what it was. And all of a sudden, it was up there on the quakes. And then we went back. Thank gosh, we took pictures. 4 hours later, it disappeared off the internet. Didn't want people knowing this kind of stuff was going on. So really, really important. You might think you're in the foothills, but again, transit system and fault lines and things can move. So always be aware of that. Take a look how far these things go, guys. Like that's pretty huge. Okay, so anyway, those were one of the things. This is one of my local lakes. I just think it's really cute. Okay, and I thought, oh, look at someone did a topography map. Like again, you might assume that you're high enough, but again, if your elevation up here just on the granite is still only about 2,000 feet, and you know you should be close to 4 if you have some sort of major pole shift, this still means that you're all flooding, which is kind of what happened in Cypress Hills. That was why it was up 4,500 feet in the middle of nowhere in the prairies. Okay, so take a look at that. Know where your fault lines are in your local areas. Really important because under these lakes are fault lines. That means all these little, resorts literally collapse, guys. You can actually have a slosh and swash and have a flood, have sinkholes, and literally it can. And we have had actually lakes disappear overnight. So some of the different things in here, and I just brought this as another thing here is take a look here where these major systems are, and sometimes they'll say like you can look up pole shift is actually one of the ones I just put one up here, Regina and Saskatoon at the time, are said to be in the grain belt and they may experience flooding. There we go. May experience some flooding. But they thought they might do well after, a little while. But we'll see what happens, right? Or Edmonton, unaware of the coming shift and where the rotation is, maybe in a sudden lurch. By the way, that's where they had all the dinosaurs the last time. So, and you've got sharks in the middle of the prairies. I don't know if you guys know that, but I used to go to all these very cool museums and all sorts of things. And when I went to the University of Saskatchewan, I just loved being because I took biology. So I'd be like digging in all these and all the crystals and all the, archaeological things. So same thing. Calgary, they figure will do fairly well, and it's simply because it's really up, like about 4,600. Okay, so hopefully they say we get nicer weather. But anyway, again, all a theory, but according to them, yeah. So take a look at that. Okay, so anyone else here too is these are some of the eruptions, and I think this is really important to know, right? Because who would think, right? People go, oh, I don't think about stuff, but look at what's right under my ass. Like seriously, look how many eruptions are potential, and a lot of these are actually getting activated. So take a look at that. Why would that not have a fall off in here? So do take a look. Mount Baker, Rainier, Mount St. Helens has been doing a bunch of this stuff. Mount Hood, Three Sisters, Crater Lake, all these things. Mount Shasta, even going into California, and there are some as well in British Columbia. And other areas. People always think it's down there, but you got to really learn where this stuff is happening. So take a look at that. And that was just Betelgeuse again. Just wanted to let you know that there's a Betelgeuse in the Orion constellation. So like I said, these things have got heartbeats and they have little pulsations, and this is what they're looking for right now, just to see what's happening. So that's kind of cool. And then this is when I was in Project Ascension. So Project Ascension, this was the 16th one we did with Andrew Mallet, And this was courtesy of Patty Broussard. And this actually was some of the stuff Patty was doing with the lava beds under there. This is something they don't talk a lot about, but did you know you got lava underneath too? Anything's possible, right? So you got to know where some of these tubules are. And that was a map that was templated and absolutely brilliant because some people in the government didn't know about that. In here again, changes. This is a really cool map. This is about migration, right? So a lot of people assume, natives and Indians and North American Aboriginals and stuff. Look where the genetics come from or where they start. So that's when you start talking about the lost tribes of Israel or the Russian, Siberian, Tartarian tribes that were actually here genetically first. This is a very cool one. Meredith Quinn, we want to thank you. I was looking at all my Dakota Time Walker stuff off the Eagle Clan and how time is actually seen. Very cool stuff. And actually, now that I think about it, that's kind of what that Indian bonnet head looks like. Actually, if you look at the woman with kind of the feathers in the bonnet, that's actually what it looks like in Irvine now that I just kind of think about it. That's why they call it medicine hat. And there is my little bear clan beginning of original customs usages and laws and stuff and like the original books before 3,000, 4,000 years before there was even such a concept as a Bible. And the Time Walkers in here as well by Meredith Quinn. So if you haven't taken a look at the Meredith Quinn stuff, do take a look at it. Tribal laws, we'll take a look at that maybe next week. And again, just more fun maps to take a look at. A lot of people go, where's this in stone? You don't think we don't know documents? They just want you to think they don't know how to decode it, but we can. These obelisks, that's why you've got little ones in almost every town and village. They're marker stones, off the mothers and the clan mothers, right? Getting back into there. They're actually underground things that represent clan mothers and tribal mothers. The women that went into council that were basically the protectors. Those were the guardian angels, the original angelic realms on here. Things are not always as they seem. I just wanted to bring it. If I hear one more division talk about UNDRIP and say treaty this and treaty that and the bands and the reserves and the which are really sanctified prisoner of wars, I want you to see when they started. There were people here for thousands of years, actually 5 epochs before this stuff showed up. So these are all fictitious, and these are no different than the provinces, and they are no different than anything else when they make a little fake map and make people forget about it. So these treaty areas are not under international law. They never had a clan mother authorize them. Actually, they never had a council of clan mothers authorize them, and they certainly didn't have the chiefs authorize them on their behalf. So just forget about those. There's a little bit of history too in here if you learn about the different colonies and stuff, how they did that. Terrible stuff. And this was something one of the shows I did with Dr. Miller. So if you want to go back and take a look at the shows I've done with Dr. Richard Allen Miller on the pole shift and interesting information and why the X-Files was made about him, he's a wealth of information, especially if you're into the prepping part, food, water, security, that kind of thing. And again, these are actually nuclear sites. He had never quite seen some of the stuff I was putting together either. This is not only the nuclear sites, okay? So you might think you're okay, but I want you to think about this. This is what they put out to the public. That doesn't look so bad if you lose like 1/2 of the continent. But these are actually the different ones, and you're going to see how many different areas have reactors in there. Canada's got 19, the US has got 99. They don't tell you about everything. Mexico, so take a look where that map is because that's a little bit more telltale. But this is my favorite map. This is called Nuclear Targets Maps. And this is basically if something goes off, it's the area it's going to wipe out. So again, very careful where these are. And remember, in a pole shift, things are already starting to shift. It doesn't take much like Chernobyl or Fukushima. And there we go. You're going to have like a couple hundred of them on fire here. So do take a look at that. And that's why I want to talk. We're going to be talking next week and this week a little bit about protection or radiation protection because it's very important. There's many types of radiation, not just your cell phone, not just your microwave, but all sorts. There's ionizing, non-ionizing, and we can go into that. But Canada's nuclear reactors, how many people knew this? Like, really? especially if you guys are on this side of the border. Did you actually see how many different we have here? This is mind blowing. Most people never knew about these CANDU reactors. It's a whole study in itself, let me tell you. So I want you to take a look here. I like the one when you take a look here. When I was here in Saskatoon, they had one called the Slowpoke reactor. I'm like, no. And yes, so you can see what they're doing up here, why they're mining, they're doing all sorts of things in here. But this Slowpoke reactor, and they have like many synchrotrons, many CERNs, large hadron colliders. You got to remember when they start leaking, there's loss of life. There's excess radiation, and you really don't see them always reported. I've seen where they've actually had major leaks and they've covered up or shut it down and waited for a day or two, even though the explosions and all the inhalation, all the damages reached into the air, and they just shut down the reactors and no one's going to know anything. And then they'll put them back on in a week or two or whatever when the levels come down low enough. And by that point, you've been inhaled and exposed to all this. Like I said, there's a lot of evil out there in here. So anyway, those are some of the different sites. Again, quite a telltale sign. So you got to keep adding and adding these templates. So I want you to start thinking you're putting one map on top of another map on top of another map. Okay. So these are very, very important here. Okay. And this is one of the things here. Hey, Canada, basically the America's empire here, but this has got the 6th largest share of nuclear power in here. So imagine what they're doing. And this is when you start getting into the new stuff like the Golden Dome. You think this stuff sucks up all the water and the clean water and the fracking and everything to cool these things. You ain't seen nothing till you start seeing these things that they want to put into all these areas I showed you, Canada and the States. Just like that circle I showed you, if you remember, that little circle, the 19th point, I want you to think where that Golden Dome is going. Think of what they want. Think of why they want to put all the 2,000 things. This gets better. Start looking at all these things because you know what? These guys, like I said, there's always something going on in an area you may not be aware of. How many of you guys are aware of what's called the next rod? Okay, these are things NOAA and all sorts of different things I put up quite regularly. I know Tony Pantalleresco does. A lot of people, Lena Freeland, Dan Wigington, lots of people, Mark Steele. There's so many people going in here. I wish like Stefan Burns and a bunch of people, Michael a little bit more, MB333 and a few other people, Stephen Walker at JWTV. Amazing sites, you guys. Really amazing. These are the kind of things you need to know because this is when they're blasting an area. They put on the harp, they put on your towers. They're coming down and they're hitting the towers, and I call it a splatter pattern. And you can see why it looks like paint splatter. You are getting fried. This is why people are hearing their ears ring, or they're getting itchy, or they can't sleep, or there's actually ground movement in some of these areas. It's not always from underground, like a base or a train or a transit or fracking or just fault lines moving or whatever, or mining. It can also be these are the triggers. Okay. So again, these are just giving you a hint of some of the stuff that I'm aware of, right? That we and again, this is from the military U.S. Army was showing me and how they were templating. We were looking at things too. So you're not safe up there. And I'll show you why. If you, Canada, you only think you got a few, like 4 bases. I got 2,000 they don't tell you about. And one of the things too is that electronic spectrum. I was talking with Dr. Robert Young actually about this. I want you to see where these spectrums are coming. This is so important. And right now, there's hints that they want to put gamma ray on the planet right now. This is why I'm giving you guys a heads up. They're talking about a lockdown up again here within less than 6-8 weeks. So the gamma radiation, right? If you think x-rays are bad, man, oh man, oh man, nothing really reverses that gamma. Goes right through everything. So one of the things here is you start seeing the channels that we're running. But what I really want you to see here is also, which they're missing up in here, will actually be also into the terahertz range. Very, very limited. And that's what I'm saying. You see very limited in that little white band in the center. That's if you're visible. Infrared, ultraviolet, and then they've got a terahertz range in here they should stick to. But in here, this is what we were talking, is that every time they have put in radiation, 1G, 2J, whatever they're doing, 3G, whatever, moving up, 4G getting into 5, blah, blah, blah. Every time and it's a bandwidth. You guys need to think of it as, you know, a whole book of stuff, right? Like it's sliced like a basically like an MRI or a CAT scan. It goes in slivers, right? So it's one huge spectrum. They just say it's one big spectrum and you assume it's one big thing. It's not. It's massive. And so when you start looking in here, what are they using it for? 138 to 144, right? Tactical stuff, radio waves, stuff like that. People were telling me they were hearing stuff the other day. So on our community boards here in the Kootenays and the Slocan, okay, as you move up, more and more tech is using it. Again, different elite uses. It's massive. I want to see the massive amount of stuff that they're using for military that you are getting basically microwaved every day with. And you may not be aware of. So they can come in and do a scan or a LiDAR or do whatever they want, right? And this is what ties into what Sabrina Wallace is talking about, the wideband, the wide area body network. So when you're exposed to any of this stuff, there's internal, external radiation, lots of stuff here. Okay. And contamination. It can come in through the air. It's so small, it's like a chemtrail gas. Food, water can be contaminated. The food right now, there's a whole thing just on food's not food anymore. I mean, strawberries that are only painted on the outside, no chicken and anything else. That's all glue. You know, think of what you're doing. Read a label. Know that you're organics. Even that's not safe, but at least it's better than glue. So you've got to be very careful and take food into your own security. I think right now it's to the point where people need to be growing at least 40%. So I don't care if you're starting sprouting or whatever you need to learn about, like aquaponics, hydroponics, whatever. We got to be looking at this stuff now. So anyway, this is massive. Like I said, kind of any opening, it can get into any organ here. You know, and this is my surprise for you guys. If you haven't seen my favorite thing, this is years old, but most people don't know that these bunkers, some people I know are in them, and they may say they can be commissioned. It says mostly decommissioned. Doesn't mean you can't recommission it. Doesn't mean it's not used for what's called unacknowledged projects. Could be that, could be trafficking, could be a lot of stuff you don't want to know about. Okay, so these are actually being looked, have to be looked at and removed, right? Did you see that number, by the way? Am I the only one that sees that number? 2,000 bunkers and detection stations. Okay, so you can see the little orange things and a few things for detection stations, which leaves how many different bunkers and tunnels and underground sort of bases and operations here that they don't want people to know about. I've known about this stuff for like 20 years, but I want you to think about that. That's basically 200 per province in your things. And don't think there isn't that on the other end of the spectrum on the border too. Okay, so one of the things too in here, let's take a look here. Again, when we talked about that radiation, neutrinos, and I want you to see where this gamma radiation is that they're talking about doing it for the screw worms. If they want to do it to the screw worms, we're going to get screwed, guys. Look at the amount of stuff that penetrates. So that's why certain things like having lead, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tony Pantalleresco and Fiona, friend of mine. She's amazing, called Fiona for Health. Power of the Pulse, Zach Zish from Techron Zish. These are the guys that are innovative, that think outside the box. Brian 369. They're actually making basically an oscillating fan with lead. You can use lead paint. You can actually use lead, like copper and stuff like that, and neodymium magnets. And as it moves, it's going to start moving a little bit of the 6G. So, but again, I want you to see what's coming through. It's going to penetrate right through you. Okay, just like a knife to butter. So you got to be very aware of this stuff now. If you don't know this is back to all the stuff they didn't tell us in school. I just wanted to have a little reminder for people that think that they don't know stuff, but this is actually on all your Q-tips. This was up on your little, things that people shoved up your nose to make sure that you got the implant of that right to the brain. There's your calcified pineal gland, and away it goes. So that was found in just about everything now. But if you don't ask the right questions on an intake, you are going to be missing things as a healthcare professional if you are one. And these days, I'm questioning people's ethics and their ability to ask the hard questions these days. Something potassium iodine, but it's potassium iodide. Make sure you have a stock of it. They're on Amazon now. Do you know at one point you couldn't get them on Amazon? And after Fukushima, you couldn't get anything. even in the States or on the West Coast within a week. So make sure you have this. We're getting exposed to a lot of radiation. I'm trying to get that through to you. And that's why there's things here. Natural remedies, these are not going to reverse it. All it does is it helps build up your immune system. Okay. It's not going to reverse a lot of the hard stuff right now, especially if you got all the chips in there too. And the Y band and all the other things that's circulating around now. But saying that cilantro is going to reverse it is not going to do it. And red onions, and we're taking some seaweed, and we're taking some nori, and we're taking some sunflower. These are just absolute great things to have. No nutritional use. It helps build the nanotech. So a lot of these things, like I said, these are kind of standard. Taking a look at, maybe take out the chlorella. Again, basic stuff. If you can get these into essential oils, that's why your red beets and juicing some of this stuff and doing kosher, what you call buckwheat, instead of using that for wheat, soaking buckwheat and making buckwheat, different kinds of flours, sunflower flour, things like that. Take a look at this. But if you can get this in essential oils, even better, guys. So take a look at that. Always have detectors. I have 3 detectors here myself. Always have these for the house, or at least get them into your community. You need to know not only an EMF tri-field, these are again on Amazon, and I love my GQ ones. My GMCs are amazing. So you can get those on Amazon, but you can get some really inexpensive. You're just getting a couple things to see what the counts per minute is and the microsieverts. So take a look at it. Most people are missing this. I love essential oils and aromatherapy, and that's why, because they work. So all these things are affecting the way you sleep. They affect the way you think. They affect the way you have meditation. They affect the way you can reflect, focus, and relax, even to learning and concentrating, just even getting into deep consciousness. This affects everything, every aspect of our lives right now. And that's why I'm trying to get into here, because a lot of this is a wave. Radiation is a wave. You saw the waves. Start using some of these things. That's where frequency medicine comes in as well, and making sure you're alkaline and things like that. You've got to be able to use the frequencies. And that's why I love some of these devices right now. Tuning forks are great, but they're not going to get you into the states that you need. Not for everything, not for the whole biofield, not even a drop in the bucket. As you saw the visible spectrum of light, that's the visible hearing as well, pretty well. This is just our area I was doing. This is actually a year ago. That was the amount of, we'll just say, strikes. Someone put the strikes down here. Okay, you never know what's going to happen in your area. And again, take a look at what's going on. Okay, when they do an attack, they do an attack. Sometimes you can see the actual lines and different frequencies and thermals, and you can definitely see some things. You could put a ruler to some of these, and it's just perfect that night. So again, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it could be a duck. So again, take a look at some of these just to be aware. Again, this is from Nexrad. Okay, this is a great example of like mini harps and like, them hitting different cities in the towers. And of course, if you're in the tower in that 15-minute city, in that, C40 city, if you're in that, resilient city, well, there you go. That's exactly why. And can you imagine they keep hitting these and hitting these and hitting these, and you're going to be weaker and weaker and weaker. And this is why it's important not to be in these areas, and to look at relocation, and to, in the interim, look at stuff where you may even be a safe spot, or where can you go within an hour that's safer, right? Even though if you can't get out now, have a backup plan. That's just common sense. And I want you to see how bad it's getting in some of these areas here. Okay. And that's just a shot in the dark. Changes every day. It's not like every other area isn't getting hit. Okay. So you never know when something's going to happen. That's what I actually woke up to one day. Okay. That was our area last year on evacuation out there. Okay. So even the resilience of this, it's amazing how you look at it now and there's just a few gray things, but they didn't really burn it because that's a microwave going into the ground. The target is actually 5 miles in or 10 kilometers down. I don't know why people don't get it, but it's common sense. But anyway, when you look at something like this and a direct energy weapon and a 5.6 gene and all those different towers and creates fiction, right? You need to have that frequency. It's a frequency fiction, like putting a spoon in the microwave, right? And so when you take a look at this kind of stuff, now you're going to talk about all the off gassing and all the heavy metals, the aluminum and lead paint. We found a lot of people lead up in there, and then you get all the fire retardant and every other chemical that they put on it. And again, those communities are suffering and suffering because, again, it's an inhalation particle thing. So take a look here. That's how they're mapping everyone right now, right? They can see you. They can see right through the house. They can see all of us right now. So why having that, your phones and unplugging at night at least gives yourself a bit of a break in here. And again, that applies to animals. These are an example of also when you chip through the Internet of Animals, Internet of Bodies, Internet of Things, Internet of Nano Things, digital twinning. This is what they're doing. And this is like a long time. So you can see actually the temperature gradient, can see the radiation. When people have actually, it's almost like being burning from the inside out, right? So when someone says, oh, they're healthy, or someone says, but I'm burning, well, you can't see that, and how do some of these different animals, people, or even children, or people that just can't figure out what's going on, this is when you think things are being targeted here. Okay, so this is actually really severe. Okay, again, just another quick look at it. There we are. Just to remember where a lot of these are. Again, know where you live, know what's in your neighborhood. So anyway, that was some of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about today. So there we go. So is that kind of mind blowing? Are you guys like going, uh-huh? I want you to think twice. I want you to have things in your basket here. Okay, I always have that. So I'm going to go back and take a look at some of the questions because it looks like there's quite a few. So we'll start up there. Karen, what is the frequency for microplastic removal? There is no per se frequency for microplastic removal. I really, when people start going like, what's the thing for the zeolite? What's the thing for the graphene? What in here, what you're doing, microplastics and stuff like that are really embedded. It's almost like graphene or anything else. Like, aluminum's one thing to get out heavy metals. That was easy in the old days. But now what you need to do is take a look at the alkalinity. The most important thing I talk to clients about is doing colonics. You should all have enema bags. You should all know what a Klima board is. If you don't, and you should all be going for a couple colonics, get that pipe cleaned out. It's storing in there. So you have to be able to have an elimination system. What's happening is most people's colons don't function. It's not about how many poops you have and bowel movements and are they there or they're floating. I know I'm a colon hydrotherapist. Do you want to know how many thousands of colon hydrotherapy and asses I've done? I lost count in like all the years. But in here is that you have all that chemical residuals like stuck in there like biofilm. Alkalinity, get the colon cleaned out. That's your first number one thing. And you can put in essential oils. You can put essential oils in an aloe vera and things like that. Essential oils are probably some of the best things in the world for actually clearing out heavy metals and different things like plastic. No one talks about that, but it really is phenomenal. Taking lemon essential oil, I even have some here probably. I'll put a couple drops on me. I'll put it in the water, things like that. Those are actually chelation ones. There are things that we can go for different polymers and stuff like that. But again, the idea is to have that cleansing going through. And then when you get into, if you're using a biofeedback device, you can go in for sometimes, let's say like chemtrail detox, whatever it might be. So anyway, that's it. Now that you don't want to talk about because you think you're going to be underwater. Okay. Well, things are shaking. We'll just say all these things happening in Venezuela and Russia and everything else. I want you to think of the bigger picture and all the distractions. They're keeping people distracted from knowing some of this information, okay? Have a plan, right? So I'm at zero elevation across the street from the ocean with a big river on the other side. That would be a problem. One of the things is having an evacuation kit. I just think it's smart. Just anything. You don't know what's going to happen. Look at, my friends that were in North Carolina or East Palestine. You don't know. Or here, I showed you the entire fire. 1 minute it was fine. Next thing, boom. Weapons come down, lasers go on, things happen. And next thing you know, you're on the, towering inferno. You don't have time to think about some of that. So you need to be prepared. And let me tell you, we were all prepared to roll out. There were a lot of people that listened to me over the last year. I told about this fire the year before it happened, by the way. So Danny says, what part of Canada are you in? Well, I'm not in Canada. I don't recognize that jurisdiction. I would say I'm on my mother's land. I would say the tribes out here are called the Siniac tribes, and all the colonists, they think that they're in British Columbia in Canada. I don't recognize this jurisdiction. Anyway, let's see. Thank God it's Friday. You and me both. Every day's a Friday to me. But anyway, oh, I heard, what did you say? I heard all but 3 archons are gone from the earth. Happen Christmas Day. Like anything, you know what? Rumors are rumors. I know if I listen to the Zetas, to the Ashtar, I quit doing all that. I think I came off 400 groups. I'm telling you, my life has been really great the last little while. It's been quieter, but I'm not caught into that stuff right now. I think this is the time to go back in and reflect. I don't use this calendar, so it's not even a new year to me. It's not even the you're the snake, you're the monkey, you're the horse, whatever. I don't work on those calendars. So those of us that know the original calendars are still on a solar calendar. Those were like your Aztec and similar to your Mayan. But if you take a look at that, because you're out of time, and we'll go through about those time equivalents and what it's doing to you, because you need to be in sync, and that's like being grounded or being earthed or whatever. Your timelines are meridian. They're playing with people so they can place your timelines, your meridians, and that's part of shifting, right? So I think it's really important there. Time is now circular and not linear. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We'll save that for next week's thing in here. Again, very cool. I subscribe to Us Youthing. I'm all about, the soul is eternal, right? These are just avatars in and out. So, whether you call it the Time Walker Society, like you saw what the original tribes call it, time walkers, time jumpers, whatever you want to call it, right? There are a lot of people that can come in and out and stuff do it. We should all do that. Anastasia, the Ringing Sitters of Russia, talks all about that. We should probably discuss that. That would be there. So airboats are a good investment for those of us located in Southeast Texas. Yeah, well, not a bad thing to do, but look where the trajectory is. I want you guys to go look at the topography. So if you think you're in a province or a state, wherever you are, take a look at the topography and take a look at the elevation. You'd be very surprised. You'd be really surprised where some, mountain things are a little bit safer. And a lot of times you might be within an hour or two. You don't know. I would hope you're within at least 2-3 hours of it, because that's kind of a safety zone net there. And I remember when Mount St. Helens, I was 8 years old. Yeah, it's amazing. I remember when that ash was blowing all over the place up here. Can you imagine in the middle of the prairies, in the middle of upper BC and stuff like that, up in the Schwetmack and Shuswaps? I remember when that stuff was coming in too. Very cool. So artifacts were found on Vancouver Island dating back 13,000 years. Did you know they're actually out here? I am looking at actually like a prophecy rock. This is the Siniac Slocan, what you call the Valhalla prophecy rock. So I'm looking at the prophecy rock for now. It's kind of like a gathering spot, right? So it's really, really important. I've held those copper plates from like thousands of years ago that were taken to get rid of the monarchy and the queen and all the illegal aliens here. It's amazing to hold those artifacts when you realize the, significance of them. It's very huge. Let's see. I plan on remodeling my house with lead paint. Yes, go girl. There are those things you can get the EMF paint, right? Like the 5G paint, right? So you could sprinkle some of that in. I always put essential oils into my paints too and vibrate it with peace and calming and stuff. So now you think you need some floaties in your basket too. Not bad. Anyway, what's a good enema solution? We could go on and on and on with that for sure. I think I could go in there now for a sec. And also Karen Dream Dust 38 says, I have not been on a Facebook much, but I didn't know about this one. Yeah, I get around. I was like kind of like off YouTube because I kind of got banned, and I got kind of banned off Facebook. I still can't operate some of them. So now I can't even do FaceTime with a bunch of them. things are changing. You know how it goes. Okay, so you want to do a quick enema solution? Absolutely, let's do that. Okay, so we're going to go back to my favorite little place to teach that. And I have some stuff on YouTube, but I'll make another one. I think we did one a couple months ago on it, actually. But we're going to go into my favorite talks about it. So let's go into the colon hydrotherapy, Kalima, and a couple different ones here. So follow along. Remember, if you're listening, this is the fun stuff. And I invented, by the way, laughter colonics. So I will take the credit for that one too. Okay, let's go in here. Off to my Facebook, off to my little albums under here. Okay, we're just going to go to a quick one in here and then we're going to move to the big one. Okay, so I just love doing this. Okay, so most important thing is to have water. I like to do clean water myself. The cleanest, I like to use spring water, but use the cleanest water you have, in there. And basically, we can start adding things into there. So again, you can get a pH meter. You can get, measure it with, is there chlorine, fluoride? Obviously, and I have done it. Like when you're in the middle, you just do what you got to do. I'm not going to, like, if someone's dying, I'm still going to give them water out of Saskatoon if I couldn't get anything else that's fluoridated and has chlorine in it. Again, you got to outweigh the, pros and cons of it. So, but as a rule, you try and get the cleanest that you can. Okay. And one of the things is I structure the water. So I actually put them on my Genius Remedy plates and I actually restructure the water so it changes the viscosity and I can imprint anything I want in the world on it. So I'm basically using a Rife or radionic version or radiesthesia version. So I make my own structured water. And then the next thing is we're just going to go up to the top here for a second. So colon hydrotherapy. The one with the blue jug there is called the Woods method. And that's basically where you can get a little water bottle. You can get, at least if you have 2-3 gallons, there's going to be enough pressure coming down. You want, between close to 1 psi to get there. The machine on the right far corners is called a Prime Pacific Aquanet. And they come with gravity, they come with pressure, and then they have one that does both, which is my favorite. But having said that, that water bucket, you can get a water bucket and some hosing, and I would suggest you do that because it's next to nothing. And you can get some actually speculums for anywhere from a couple dollars or get some enema kits. So I'm going to go through that. The weird thing that you see hanging over the toilet that's being held up by a chair with a bucket, dear Liza, those are called Kalimas. And I want you to see how things are moved around. So I usually want the water slightly alkaline. I can put some herbs in it. You can put crystals in it and you can filter out tea. So you can take any tea in the world you want and filter it. And I use essential oils. So those are some of my favorite things. There's a great book called Dr. Bernard Jensen's Better Guide to Bowel Care. My favorite thing in the world, that in his advanced version. Gotta have these. Okay. This is the key of what they're doing. And some people will use things like enemas and stuff with coffee, but it has a limited use, if you want to direct mainline it. I've actually had people had basically heart attacks because they were doing coffee twice a day directly. You might as well just put it into your veins. Not right to do. So once in a while is one thing, but not all the time. Okay, so one of the things in here I love is this little thing here. It's called a Covidin or Kendall bag. Most nurses will know it, or if you've been in a nursing home, these are the worst days of your lives. Okay, if you've been in geriatrics. Anyway, these are basically hold about 3 to 4 cups. Don't use the Castile and all their disgusting junk. Just get some coconut oil or castor oil or a whole bunch of shea butter or all the above. But anyway, that's a plastic one. There's a much better one that's got a hard top. These run between about $3 to $7. I have a bunch. And what I do is I also have a bunch of what's called extension tubings. On these extension tubings is because if I had an emergency and I only had one bag, I have at least another 10 of these. That means I could give it to 10 different people in their butt and still have a clean bag up top. So it would only be this little part. And these are under, I think, $1.50. And that's in Canadian prices, by the way. So these are just different parts. Again, having said that, but a lot of people, I mean, you got to see where stuff is going. This is what in the old days, I still have some of these. These are actually very cool. These are the speculums, but you can see they're the metal that we would use in autoclaving. Again, what we've always shown in the hospital, you can autoclave and autoclave and autoclave and boil all the crap you want and steam the crap out of it and sterilize it with all the, stuff you want, sanitizers. Guess what? Stuff was still growing on them. Okay. So just like a cockroach, some things just don't go away. So that's one in here. One of the incredible things, I think this is so cool. This is this is the royal enemas. If you haven't seen my little talk on it, we'll probably do that. But King Louis was so fond of using enemas that basically it became a fashion all through Europe. And basically, he did it throughout his life. And I want to tell you, this is actually the courtiers did it, but this was basically, didn't want to use common water. Instead, he was perfuming them with rose, orange, and angelica. So, and also some people, milk and almond milk. Okay, still works to this day. Still works to this day. So anyway, those are some of the backgrounds. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Okay, these are instruments actually that he had. I mean, look at that. That's like bloody amazing. But anyway, that goes back into some of that. So I think that is pretty cool. There is, if you want to get into the background of it, the royal flush. I think it's quite funny. But now we're going to see how far we're going back here into the time of pharaohs and the king of France. Okay, we're talking, this goes back. You also had a position in the royal palace and house of being the guardian of the anus. I don't know if I'd quite go to that's what my position, the queen of green and whatever else. There's a lot of stuff I've done here. The Mama Kishika. I've been called a lot of things, but these enemas and cupping and recipes for prescription for enemas were on papyrus, you guys. Okay, wasn't just a physician. Everyone knew how to do it. All the mothers did their children. They did them 4 times a year. That's how you dewormed. This is what I'm telling you. You want to hear about these parasites and what's going on right now? Is it the bugs? Is it in the injections? Is it this? Is it the cancer? It's all this stuff, and this is not going to be going on. I'll have to take this off YouTube tonight because we've got to get it up to Rumble. Okay, I'll make a short version later. But this is really important here. Okay, it's not only for digestion and excretion, it is for everything: headaches, sexual dysfunction, allergies, asthma, childbirth, pregnancy, libido, longevity. All of that stuff was done here. It was part of the rituals. See in Gospel of Peace, what did they tell you? If anyone's ever read those books, those are actually in there. It was done before you got pregnant, before you would actually even think of intercoursing. You did this kind of stuff. Let me tell you. Okay, those people that think they know where they are, look at this. Look at this, you guys. All over the place. You got wellness centers, teaching centers, right? Doesn't matter where you are. We have colon hydrotherapy schools that you get certified in. There we go. Okay, they're all over the place. And then if I showed you, almost every city's got some big ones. But anyway, just quickly, we're going to go into that, and then we'll be finishing that up here. There's my nursing cap with my little black stripes. Anyway, colon irrigation, all this, enemas, all these sort of things. You're cleaning out everything. You got dental fillings, you got toenail fungus, you don't feel well, you got mental, emotional issues, colonics. Okay, it's to feed the soul. Like I said, the stuff is getting in this nanotech. Radiation. Remember, leaky gut, leaky brain, leaky gut. Clotting in the arteries and veins, not feeling well. Guess what? You better be cleaning out first. So all these things are in there. It should not have to get to the point it's perforated. Like I said, you don't know what's in there. And this is from similar to Bernard Jensen's. You are a colon, whether we like it or not. Most people are anal retentive, but you have reflexology, that colon, once it's been moved. When I do iridology, that's what we're doing. We're looking at all those things. Okay, it all comes back to this. All come back to the gut when we're reading you. Get the books, or you can get scanners, or I have the scanners. All these things are educational. So in these different things, a lot of people just use warm water. In here, some people will put a couple drops of hydrogen peroxide in them. A lot of people like to put in a little bit of Celtic sea salt. I've put in almost everything. I've put in chocolate. I've put in MMS. I've ozonated the water, all those sort of things. But if nothing else, don't just do it. I really want you to do it. And it's not that big a deal, really. So there are buckets, there are bulbs, really great for children. Do you know they used to all do children? Always. I have friends still in there. A lot of people in their 60s and 70s that knew from the rural community still remember getting it done. The lost art of healing instead of going to the doctors. This, instead of a water pick, is actually a actual, like a water pick, only goes the other end. Okay. There you're seeing water enemas, coffee enemas, herbal tea enemas, garlic enemas, probiotics. Remember, most herbs and oils can be opened up. You can open up anything you can take orally. You can usually open up that capsule and stick them in there. Epsom salt, very, very common. Lemon juice. You're just not going to put a lot of cayenne pepper up there and a lot of peppermint. There's some like common sense. But having said that, speaking of common sense, make sure you take the little blue. There's usually a blue cap that comes on just to keep it kind of clean from the company, right? It doesn't have to be like you can clean it with peroxide, you can clean it with Castile, I clean it with, essential oils. If you want to boil it, whatever. But in here, someone forgot to take a tube off one day, and I got a call, and I had to go over there, and we were waiting and waiting. And thank gosh, I was like probably 5 months away from doing a digital, which I really didn't want to do on my girlfriend, but nonetheless, she just forgot to take the tip off. She didn't read the instructions. I always read the manuals. And thank gosh she pooped it out. So, yep, she pooped out this little thing about the side of a tampon. Nothing else. Anthony Williams, the medical medium, there you go. You can actually do juicing. That's where you see a lot of things like chlorophyll, by the way. I was one of the first ones to do cannabis, by the way, from the hemp fields. We actually juiced them on there. So rooms are usually very, very nice. I don't need to do colonoscopies. What you need to do and not leave all the heavy metals and the dyes and radioactive in someone is you basically should be doing enemas. Doing an enemas. And my favorite thing, the Healthy Life, look up Kara does enemas. Marcus Rothkrantz does enemas. The Healthy Life has got all that stuff. Actually a book on how to do it. So there you go. That's my thoughts on that. You have a clean bowel. There's one of my clients. Actually, that's one of the ones I fished out. That was my client that was told she had high blood pressure. Guess what? They were wrong. Okay. When you have a bug like that, a parasite eating the amount of food, okay, that's been in there. And it's called pleomorphism. So it started off as a little thing and it grew and it grew and it can grow into many things. And that's the whole thing. They don't teach about pleomorphism properly. But like I said, every little part is important, right? All these things are affecting all the things coming in there. So when you learn about oils, raindrop, all the essential oils, ginger, lavender, digees, whatever, used them all in enemas here. All sorts of things. So there's your tuning fork, all your different things. Have some fun, right? Get everything cleaned out as much as you can. Aloe vera is another thing I've put into actually essential oils. And with that, or not only for back or DSMO, I've actually used these in enemas too. So these are another excellent, excellent thing is to use aloe vera juice. You know, you can use turpentine. You can use almost any of these things. Any of these herbs and stuff can actually be melted down and do things like that. So anyway, those are a couple things in there. So hopefully that gave you some ideas. Look these up, how to do an enema at home, right? Like I said, you can do them on the floor. I do them on the bed. You can do them in the bathtub. I've done them on the couch. I don't think there's too many places I haven't. I've done it at a sweat lodge. I've done it out camping because people were sick, food poisoning, right? Boil up some water, and I always carry a kit with me, always, because it's faster than an IV. Someone's having a heart attack or a stroke, boom, you can get that fluid in there faster than you can call 911. Okay, lots of stuff is out there. So thank you for joining me. So hopefully that answered some of the questions there. So where we do, I talk to the water. Very important, talk to the water. Talk to it in your mother's language, even better. I talk to the water through my voice, which goes into the biofeedback and then gives it's the molecular thing too. So you can actually talk to the water. They're fractals to the water. We do that as well. So you can remember, I can take my voice and convert it into a math or convert it into a sound or other sounds, but I can convert my voice into light as well, right? So very, very important, and crystallize the water. That's why I like biofeedback, because see what I'm doing here? Okay. I'm going to be actually talking to my water, and that's another way of going, oh, I'm going to be putting frankincense in there. So that the plant's going to talk to the water. The crystals are going to talk to the water. I don't just have to talk to the water, but I could take this lemon and infuse it into here through the frequency, not, just this kind of thing, right? There's a lot of people who do that and then try putting it in for a sec. I don't know if you guys have ever done that. I do lots of strange things, but then it works, right? Clients get results, right? Okay, that's the first book I ever put me on this path to help. Bernard Jensen's amazing. My favorite thing. I actually met Michael Bryan. So if you know about the Bernard Jensen story, like how he basically was dead, right? And they gave him a couple days to live. And Michael Bryan came down there, and with his wife, they opened up basically 500, like a bottle of 500 digestive enzymes, and they opened up all these little capsules, and they put him in warm water, and they spoon fed it to him, and he walked out of the ICU. Okay, later, actually, no, Michael Bryan. I met him at Avena when we were in Red Deer. Danny says, I've been listening to Doc Ram interviews lately. He's so full of wonderful knowledge. I get irritated because almost every interviewer is rude to him and cuts him off. It seems he's a legend. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and you got to be very patient and stuff like that. There are things, when again, people being focused and stuff like that. He's got so much, it's all over, and to get the information that sometimes we want to do. But a lot of us, if you've heard the stories and we just want to get one or two things out, you need to get people so they can focus, right? And it's really kind of, he's a legend of his own, right? Which is like why I like, hanging out with him a bit. So I think it's pretty cool. And yeah, that comes into letting him have the story. But if I need to do something and he's all over, I can't get that information. So right now I have a PowerPoint and I let him tell me about it. that's how I do it. Or if you are, wanting to interview with him or anything, you got to have your questions ahead of time, right? And give that in there. So anyway, how about water in your singing bowl? Do you know I pioneered a lot of that a long time ago? I would go get spring water from findaspring.org. I'm going up tomorrow to go get my water as well. And you can put it in the crystal bowl or your singing bowls or in here. This is the same thing. This vibrates, right? Remember, this is going to vibrate it like a crystal bowl, basically. You can do that as well. Absolutely. I put essential oils in. And speaking of that, I will give you an email. There's a friend of mine just met last couple weeks ago, was Reese Thomas. He's amazing. So if you guys want to have like next level stuff, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about him next week too. Absolutely. All about the water. Wow. Dream dust are you dreamed and dusted out already? No. So Christy said, Mom, I take care of about 88. Well, now I'm confused. I take care of 88. 88 will never do an enema of. Oh, your mom. Okay, your mom you take care of. Okay, is 88 years old, I guess is what you're trying to say. Will never do an enema. I've talked to her about yoni. She is very reluctant to do anything, even herbs, or we drink chlorine water, and it's just like, ugh. Well, it is, you don't have to do that. You can have your own. Don't suffer along because someone else wants to suffer, right? And so I go out and get my spring water. I mean, I'm only responsible for me, on that. And like I said, anyone, if you look at, why did they have a royal colon hydrotherapist? They had the guardian of the anus, but they still did. Queen Elizabeth and all those, they had homeopathics and aromatherapists, and they had their colon hydrotherapists. If you know who goes into the very top clinics, let me tell you, it's done. It just is. And, like I said, that they're not willing to try stuff, then why? This is one of the things I got into biofeedback because sometimes, like, my children wouldn't do everything, of course, I wanted them to do. But you know what? I could actually plate all their food, all their water, clear the plate of food off in a couple minutes and re-imprint it. So it's kind of like restructuring it. This is much more advantageous than just Dr. Emoto stuff. And doing prayer only changes the molecular structure about 15-20%. It doesn't do a big reversal that way. So anyway, the name my daughter gave me a long time ago, she set up my email. We used my birthday numerology at least 25 years ago. I study dreams, so it just worked out that way. All right, so I'm just about done for the day. I got to get up tomorrow, and I've got some shows coming up on here. So I was on Rob Khalil. If you guys didn't see that one, I was on Rob Khalil on Typical Skeptic. You can go back. Actually, it was actually January 1st. And so basically, if you haven't seen that one, I'll put it in. How many of you guys actually did you guys see that? Anyone see that one that I did? It's actually pretty cool. It's one of my better ones, actually. We were talking a little bit about that. And so if it's something that kind of you'd like to take a look at in there, I'll give you the link here in the bottom. And I'm going to give a shout out to Rob there. And so one of the things as well is just enjoying as much as you can, right? And getting to be with the different people here. So I'm going to put this in there. This is called the biofield. And so I was talking a little bit about that. You can always pass that around. This one was pretty benign, you know. It says conspiracies and all that, but actually it wasn't that bad. There will be about 5 minutes only on YouTube, which is what I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to upload this to Rumble because they'll knock out my account again. And I already got a strike or two. So anyway, in here, and so we started going into talking about not just biofeedback, but I want you to see, actually, I was experimenting here because I like to do that. And what I did was I went and ran the biofeedback and I was working on his acupuncture points and he could actually feel it. So if it's something that, you know, sometimes someone doesn't want to listen to you, well, you know, I am a nurse, I'm a colon hydrotherapist, I'm a rheumatherapist, I'm a whole bunch of things, right? And so sometimes if you put something in front or just show them a, you know, 1 or 2 minutes or something like that, or say, well, what do you think of this? Or have you heard of this? Or what do you know? Don't tell them what to do or that you want them to do it. Just say, you know, I was reading about this. What are your thoughts? Or have you had friends or what have you heard about it? Introduce the conversation that way. You know, you don't have to be stuck on the income and of what this is going to cost or the outcome of what you might expect here. But here's some of the things that were in here. And so I went into some of the different things like Marcus Rothkrantz, you know, and the Heal Yourself 101 and stuff like that. So if that's something that kind of excites you, that'll be us going in there. And then on Sunday, I have been invited by Eve Howard, actually, and also with Luca on their thing. So I am going to be taking a look here and do that. So anyway, I would like you guys to keep that in mind. So we will be doing with she goes by Eve Thunder Howard and also with Luca Novak. And so I will be putting that up here. They've got their own channel as well. And I will actually show you that because I just have this. It just came to me. So I will show you this before we leave today because it will be up. And it's the first time I actually spent about 3 hours with her. They actually pre-interview with a few times that you've been pre-interviewed before you go on. So one of the things in here is, where did it go? There we go. Okay, this is going to be episode 67, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a preload or not. But anyway, I will be talking about all this incredible, exciting stuff. So we spent 3 hours, and she was like just blown. So we're going to do some stuff there. So that will be on Prime Declassified Podcast. So you can find me there. And I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you guys have a great evening, and we'll talk to you later. Evening. Take care. Ciao.